Now, I don't know about your particular story, but for me, after I was initially lured into K-pop by TXT Subin, the thing that really got me going down the rabbit hole was something that quite possibly got you going down the rabbit hole as well: BTS funny moments. These videos, funny moments of idol groups, but specifically BTS funny moments, are well known for getting fans invested in a group and for helping them learn the names and faces of the members. These kinds of videos have become so well known that new fans, or people who are interested in becoming fans of a group, search for funny videos or ask pre-existing fans to recommend funny content. Now, I could realistically make a full video about why these are the specific kinds of videos that get fans interested, but I don't actually think it's that complicated. Funny things are funny, entertaining, and engaging and get all of the good hormones in our brains going. On top of that, someone having similar humour to us can endear them to us, and by extension makes us feel closer to them, and thus more invested and more likely to spend money. Getting their groups to be funny and enhancing this with fun editing is something K-pop companies would reasonably be interested in doing, since, well, it creates the kind of parasocial relationships that they want in their fans, and which get fans spending money. Hence, K-pop variety shows. So that's all well and good, but if I'm not talking about why K-pop variety shows are so psychologically important, which is probably the kind of thing you expected from my channel, what am I talking about? Well, for a long time I thought the greatest K-pop variety show of all time was Going 17, but I've been inspired to make this video because I believe there's a new contender for that title. And I've already given you a clue about which one that is if you were listening closely enough. Or if you looked at my community post. But even though this video was inspired by one show in particular, I would like to talk about variety shows in general. In this video, I'll give a brief overview of the history of K-pop variety shows, and then we'll discuss the specific kinds of shows that K-pop has branched out into. Then I'll discuss the shows that I think are the best and give some reasons why. And finally, we'll discuss what I think has now become the greatest K-pop variety show of all time, and my reasons why I think that. Now, it's kind of hard to find information about the first K-pop variety shows online, especially considering they're kind of merged online with Korean variety shows in general. Although I can't say for certain, it's a pretty obvious conclusion to come to that K-pop variety shows would have originated from Korean variety shows in general, which have been going strong for literal decades. So I'll start with the origin of Korean variety shows before heading into K-pop specific ones. I'll also be using this post from my favourite place r/Kpop help, which saved me from having to make my own history related post. It seems like although Korean variety shows have existed in some form since the 60s, and K-pop and Korean music shows have existed since the 90s, they became more common in the early 2000s. Hilariously enough, this is also where we get our first mention of a K-pop variety show. All of my research seems to lead to the conclusion that the first K-pop variety show in existence was G.O.D's Baby Diaries, a show which can be found unsubbed online, in which the members of the group look after a baby. Duh. This show seems to have aired from mid to late 2000, which, wow, it really is old in K-pop terms. And hilariously has an ongoing legacy, as idols being forced to awkwardly look after children is a trend that continues to this day. This show was obviously not edited to anywhere near the same standard we would expect today, but despite this and despite the 25-year time gap, I swear I've seen some of these exact scenes in the past from other groups. Next comes Super Junior with their own show, appropriately named Super Junior Show, in 2005 to 2006, and 2PM's 2009 show called 2PM Wild Bunny. Now, there seems to be a consensus that around this time there were tons of idol groups going on variety shows, but one, no one seems to be able to give any actual examples, which isn't surprising since they were probably lost to time or at least to the English-speaking internet, and two, This doesn't seem to be any actual other variety shows run by groups. Mind you, maybe these people just asked the wrong questions to get those kinds of answers. Next, we get to our first variety show that includes a variety of idols from different groups. Hello Baby, nicely pointed out to me by someone on r/Kpop help. The concept of the show is similar to GOD's Baby Diaries. Guests from groups look after babies. This seems to have been a trend. Mind you, I guess it still is a bit. Anyway, Hello Baby aired from 2009 to 2013 and featured a different group for every season. In order, the groups featured were Girls' Generation, SHINee, T-ara, Sister and Leeteuk, M-Black, B1A4 and Boyfriend. Next, I learned about Invincible Youth, which aired from 2009 to 2012, and across 2 seasons included guest appearances from a variety of girl group members, including Guhara, Sunny, Hyoyeon and Yuri from Girls' Generation, Hyuna, Hyomin from T-ara, Suzy from Miss A, Amber from FX, and more. The whole point of the show was that the 7 girls in Season 1 or 8 girls in Season 2 would learn how to farm and participate in a variety of farming-based activities. In the early 2010s, we see a boom in reality shows, both in terms of those run by groups themselves and those where groups or group members are guests. For instance, one of my most appreciated shows, Weekly Idol, began airing in 2011. As you may know, since the show runs to this day, the concept of the show is that every episode a new idol group is introduced and does some variety segments. The nature of these segments has changed over time, but basically they'll do some challenges, do some aegyo, answer some questions, and promote themselves while hopefully being super funny and gaining fans. Although the first 3 episodes of the show didn't actually include any guests, the first group to actually be featured in the show was Infinite in episode 4, aired on August 13th, 2011. You can actually find this episode online with English subtitles. I'll link it in my research document. It's pretty crazy to think that Weekly Idol started here. And wonderfully enough, Infinite have been back pretty consistently since, and there are common references to them being, well, veterans on the show. Speaking of Infinite, they and many other late first to second gen groups were the pioneers of the variety show, with these groups being the first ones to take advantage of, the advantages of variety content. As I mentioned previously, variety content helps create an even deeper emotional parasocial connection with fans, and also keeps fans engaged and interested in the group. It also gives them more content to consume, and thus more content for the company to monetize. It's a win-win-lose situation. The fans gain fun content, the company gains money, and the idols get overworked and stalked by even more parasocially obsessed fans. Although many groups were influential during this time, it seems like Super Junior were super influential, along with the regular suspects like SHINee, Girls' Generation, T-ara, Infinite, and Big Bang. These groups laid the foundation for the immense popularity and quantity of variety shows we see today. A lot of the shows around this time, such as EXO's Showtime, also had a focus on the behind the scenes of being an idol, something that fans likely hadn't had much insight into previously, and which would have also had the effect of increasing empathy and parasociality, since it humanizes idols and shows their struggles. Another staple show began around this time, Knowing Bros, which had a similar concept to Weekly Idol, and has aired since 2015. It doesn't just star idols, but they are some of the most common guests. The first guest was Jung Hyunjun in January 2016, and the first idol guest I could find was Sulby, also in January 2016. If you're looking for the first group on the show, it seems to have been WJSN in March 2016. And now we get into the part of every K-pop history segment which divides said segment in 2. Pre and post BTS. Despite what seems to be a common belief among ARMYs, BTS did not create the concept of variety shows, or even K-pop variety shows, and it's arguable how much of a role they even played in popularizing them. The most I can definitively say is that, as with all BTS content, Run BTS did indeed become very popular, and by virtue of popularity influenced more groups to run their own shows. But this was already a trend that had started without BTS, So it's up to you to decide whether our current state would have happened with or without them. The benefit of BTS being super well known for their variety shows is that said variety shows are extremely well documented. For instance, I found this very helpful article on BTS's reality shows leading up to their 9th anniversary. BTS, following the growing trend of idol variety shows at their debut, ran a variety show called Rookie King, which was followed in 2014 by the more famous, or maybe more infamous, American Hustle Life, which I think probably remains one of the most unique idol variety shows to this day, for better or worse. They then released BTS Gayo in 2015 to 2017, which, as this article points out, seems to have been absorbed into Run BTS. Speaking of Run BTS, the one you were probably expecting me to talk about first, the show began running in 2015 and has continued to this day, outside of some hiatuses for BTS member breaks and for military service. The common narrative around the show is that since BTS had been so consistently and terribly mistreated by mainstream variety shows, Big Hit just decided to create their own. Now, first of all, this narrative often comes with the one that BTS basically invented variety shows, which isn't true, and that they popularized them, which is debatable. I also haven't been able to verify whether BTS were or weren't mistreated. I know tons of clips exist online of the members being slighted by higher-ups and seniors. Most heart-wrenchingly to me, this video of Jungkook buying lunch for people he's working with who then reject it as garbage. At the same time though, the argument seems to be that they were mistreated because they were from a small company, which is odd considering every other group from a small company didn't seem to have these same problems to the same extent at this time. And also, every single fandom under the sun seems obsessed with creating an oppression race and victim narrative for their groups and the group's members. Literally any fandom will tell you that their group is horribly mistreated and provide tons of evidence. And just as with Taekook, if you see tons of evidence for something, you can believe anything, really. So BTS was certainly mistreated, but I don't know if it was as much as Rapid Army's claim, and I've never seen any verifiable evidence that that is why they created Run BTS. Not just because variety shows were becoming more popular at that time. As of 2025, the show has 156 episodes across 3 seasons, with a special season that aired just before the members went to complete their military service in 2023. Since Jin was the first member to come back from the military, a spin-off show has been running since his return called Run Jin, which when it started really brought back the Jin hit memes. As of writing this script, Run Jin has 28 episodes, a number which will certainly become very outdated by the time this video is released. Jin has continued the legacy of Run BTS throughout the group's hiatus and has tried many things, most notably to me, fencing, which I coach. Anyway, just as an aside, yes, the coaches were right. I kid you not, Jin is absolutely a natural at fencing. Alright, so Run BTS. Well, like I said earlier, by virtue of BTS being a popular group, Run BTS became super popular, especially because it, like I said at the beginning of the video, is one of the main ways in which people become interested in and learn about the group. And it has become a huge part of their identity, showing how being an idol in the 3rd gen wasn't just about singing and dancing, but also about how charismatic you were and how easily you could connect with the fans through potentially feigned truthfulness. This became even more obvious through shows like Bon Voyage, a show which on a surface level could be interpreted as the group having a fun holiday, and was certainly marketed that way, but which in reality has them all still working and still in character. In the Soup was, in my opinion, an even more egregious version of this and makes me so angry, because it was advertised as a break and retreat for the members, but they were still on camera. Okay, the overworking of BTS and their content machine is a topic for a different video. Basically, even though they were starting to become more popular around the start of 3rd gen, BTS still definitely showed the definitive power of variety shows. And whether because of them or other groups, or more likely a combination, we saw far more shows be created after Run BTS. To be fair, K-pop in general grew around this time and we saw much more of everything, but the point still stands. Some groups who created their own individual shows around this time include Twice, Blackpink, EXO, and more. The Usual Suspects Part 2. These days, it is relatively common to see groups have one or more of their own dedicated reality shows, while also attending other variety shows like Weekly Idol and appearing in other segments on channels like Dingo and M2. Variety personality has become a hugely important skill for idols to have, and variety segments in general have become more common, appearing even in music shows, most notably M Countdown. I didn't actually mention this in my original script, but can I just say that variety skills are so important that people have literally won survival shows off of having good variety skills. Like, one example I can think of is, I'm pretty sure it was really important in Gyuvin's debut in Zero Base One. Youngin and Yujin from Kepler were also really good at it. Hikaru did a pretty good job. Hanbin's really good at it. I don't know that anyone really got into Isna because of variety skills. I mean, they were rigged anyway, but still. So yeah, just some examples that it's really important, you know. And a lot of people become really popular because of their variety skills, like Kiho's really well known for that kind of thing. Soul's known for that kind of thing. Let me think of an example, it's not P1 Harmony. Dreamcatcher are quite well known for it. Obviously BTS are, TXT are, and I mean that's one of the reasons that TXT's shows are quite popular. 17 literally made a career out of it. That kind of thing, right? Another type of variety show which has become far more common in recent years is one-on-one shows, or shows which typically have one idol host speaking to 1 to 5 guests from another group each episode. It's hard to find the origins of this kind of show since it isn't really as defined as its own genre in comparison to group-specific shows. And even though I'm sure this has been going on for far longer, the earliest example I could find was Eric Nam's Debug Show. The Debug Show started in 2019 and features Eric talking to idols about, well, lots of different things. The show is run on the YouTube channel Dive Studios, which also runs several other shows of this kind, like Unbelievable, and larger scale shows like Whiting and Singing Race. Now, the boundaries between these kinds of shows is blurred, but you might also consider Idol Radio to be one of these, in which case it would be the earliest that I have found since it started in 2018. The next example I could find was provided by a well-timed r/Kpop Thoughts post, which came out around the time I started researching this video. It mentioned Alcohol Street Fighter by Heechul as the OG talk show kind of show, and this show started in late 2021, so although it isn't as old as the Debug Show, it's definitely at the beginning of this trend. Next we have Youngji's show Not Much Prepared, which first aired in June 2022, and was closely followed by Jonathan's The K-Star Next Door, which, speaking of, Jonathan seems like a really interesting guy with a poignant life story who's really embraced the opportunities given to him. But that's not the topic for this video. Sugar's Sushitoa also came out at the end of 2022. Anyway, after Not Much Prepared, The K-Star Next Door, and Sushitoa, we see a very well-known example, Eunchae's Star Diary, which began airing in 2023. And honestly, I think if I had to attribute the growth of these kinds of shows to any particular show, I would probably say Yeonji and Eunchae popularized it, or at the very least helped lend to the boom. Also in 2023 we saw Idol Bommy, and this is when there really was an explosion of other one-on-one style talk shows. A good chunk of idols now have their own variety shows, many of which are centered around eating and drinking and which have a more candid attitude, perfect for parasocial relationship creation. In 2024 and 2025 we saw the creation of, to name a few, Chaeyeon's drinking show, Soyeon's cooking show, Nayeon's trick code, thanks r/Kpop help, and more. I'm almost certain I've heard of more. For instance, I'm convinced I heard of Sakura having one, but I couldn't find details. So with that said, let's summarize it a bit and go over all the kinds of variety shows we see in K-pop, keeping in mind that many of these categories aren't black and white and do overlap. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the boundaries between these categories are blurred, and this list is by no means exhaustive, but I think it is pretty comprehensive. First, we have shows by groups. These shows follow one group through multiple episodes as they typically take part in various challenges or try various things, and can be either long-term ongoing shows like Run BTS, or shorter form shows with fewer episodes, like the Hello 82 Challenge series for groups. These two examples also show another duality of these shows. They can be run either by the group and their company, like with Run BTS, or they can be run by an external company like Hello 82. Some shows in this category include Run BTS, ATEEZ's Treasure Film, Going 17, TXT's To Do, Kepler's Keplanet and Keplerving, Twice's Time to Twice, and many of the other shows I mentioned in the last section like GOD's Baby Diaries. Next, we have variety segments. These are segments on larger shows which have variety elements. The most salient example of this I can think of is how many music shows like M Countdown have variety segments with the hosts and other guests sprinkled in throughout their main episode. This serves as another way for idols to get publicity and pads out the episode's runtime. I would probably also include things like Idol Radio in this category. Next, we have ongoing shows which host various idols and idol groups. Some examples of shows like these would be Knowing Bros and Weekly Idol. There are also shows like this which feature different groups each time but which don't have hosts, such as the Idol Human Theatre and Dingo's Mafia Dance. Next, we have talk show style shows, typically run by a single host. These form the new wave of shows, and the category includes shows like Not Much Prepared, Alcohol Street Fighter, Sujitoire, Eunchae's Star Diary, and more. Jonathan's The K-Star Next Door could arguably fit into either this category or the previous one. It is a show run by one host which hosts small groups of idols rather than full groups, and which features a different group each week. But it also includes challenge segments like Knowing Bros and Weekly Idol, whereas most of these one-on-one or one-on-small group shows are more like talk shows. Finally, we have survival shows, which are obviously their own category, but which I thought deserved a mention here as a relevant kind of K-pop show. Survival shows have had a massive impact on the popularity of K-pop, and of K-pop variety and other shows. Survival shows aren't variety shows themselves, but they do notably have variety segments, including the typical sports day and challenge segments. These segments serve the same purpose as a variety show in allowing the trainees to show off their personalities, and have been used in the past to allow companies to push certain trainees for the final group, both through showing how funny they are and through the power of just giving them more screen time. Hence, they gain many of the same benefits as regular variety shows: stronger parasocial relationships, drawing in fans, and greater fan investment, and thus more money. And also votes. Alright, so with that said, what is the best variety show and why? Okay, I mean, I don't think I need this disclaimer, but I'll give it anyway. The best variety show is the one that you personally enjoy the most, but I do want to take a look at some of the most successful and loved variety shows, and to consider why they are or were successful. And also I have my own agenda, so you'll find out about that soon. So what makes the best variety show? Well, you could argue any number of points, but I will be taking into consideration general popularity and views, budget, and how generally liked the show is by the wider K-pop fandom, as well as how much influence the show has on a group, either in terms of image or popularity. Before I give you my list, let me give you an overview of some other shows that people nominated, both on my own r/Kpop help post, and on other posts I found. This will serve as a general list of recommendations for anyone watching this video who is interested in checking out a new group or show. People who commented on these posts recommended Not Much Prepared, Nion's Trick Code, Running Man, the entire Pixid YouTube channel in general, and all of Jonathan's shows, Eunchae's Star Diary, Going 17, and Time to Twice. Some less common or more niche recommendations included Hell's Club with Hyeri, Zip Daesung, Minju's Pink Cabinet, Treasure Map, The New Things by TNX, and Girls' Generation's Hello Baby. And now, what about my list? Well, I've tried to be as impartial as possible here. Not all of these shows are my favourites, but they are ones that I think deserve to be on this list for one reason or another. They include Weekly Idol, GOD's Baby Diaries, Run 17, Not Much Prepared, Star Diary, and Going 17. Weekly Idol has a pretty strong argument for being the best. It's one of the longest running and most well known of and well liked. Really, one could argue that it's literally the ultimate reality show, since it hosts such a wide variety of groups and does an amazing job of showcasing various groups and introducing fans to various groups. It also showcases group dynamics and helps fans learn the names and talents of specific members, especially with the name tags they wear, which are sadly only in Korean. No clue why. These purposes are shared with other shows like Knowing Bros, but Weekly Idol is older than Knowing Bros and has a longer run and greater breadth than shows like Invincible Youth. Next, we have GOD's Baby Diaries, which doesn't really have much of a claim to being the best, except that, as far as I could find, it was the first, and so definitely deserves at least an honourable mention. Next, we have Run BTS, whose claim to fame is relatively obvious, being the most famous. It's hard to find the hard stats for Run BTS since the show used to be hosted on VLive and gained most of its views there, but the reposts of episodes on YouTube are still pretty popular. Having a quick look through various episodes, the greatest number of views I saw was 2.2 million, and the smallest I saw was around 166,000 views. But I have no doubt that these numbers have been significantly lowered, since most of the views would have been on VLive. A Koreaboo article from 2020 also lists 10 episodes with view numbers between 10 million and 16 million. Mnet has also done limited TV runs of the most popular Run BTS episodes, which is a pretty large claim to fame. As I mentioned while discussing the history of K-pop variety shows, Run BTS wasn't the first variety show, nor was it the first variety show even run by a group themselves. It wasn't even the one that started the popularization of variety shows, but it was the one that showed the power of variety shows in creating and growing a fandom, and thus would have had a not insignificant role in making them as popular as they are today. It's also one of the longest running shows by a group, and this year reaches its 10th year. Next we have Not Much Prepared. This one doesn't really have a chance in the overall field of variety shows, since, well, it is going up against some of the most famous and long-lasting reality shows like Run BTS and Weekly Idol. But it does have a claim to fame in the talk show variety field, where it was one of the shows that most popularized the format and was, although not the first show, one of the first. Youngji's show is popular and well-liked, and fans seem to appreciate how it, through a drinking show format, allows idols to be vulnerable and a bit silly and goofy. Everyone also seems to really like Youngji. I know she was known of before, but I feel like this show and the connections she made with popular idols, especially Hoshi from 17, really propelled her into the public consciousness, and now she is well known, well liked, and well respected in K-pop. Hoshi's episode has 25 million views at the time of writing, which is kind of insane. And even more insanely, this is like a relatively normal view count for this show. Next we have Eunchae's Star Diary, which is another one of the most popular and well-liked show in the talk show field. Eunchae is a charming and well-liked host, and her nervousness meeting new people is endearing to lots of fans. She's also had, as with many of these talk shows, a wide range of guests, resulting in many interesting moments, most of them surrounding her age and the large age gap between her and older idols. Both Star Diary and Not Much Prepared, along with pretty much every talk show or rotating cast show, have vastly differing view counts based on which group features on the show. I mentioned 17 for Not Much Prepared, so I'll mention them again for Star Diary. Scoop's and Dino's episodes have 1.7 million and 1.9 million views respectively. Even considering the fact that Hoshi is arguably a more popular member of the group than Scoop's and Dino, and that Hoshi's episode went viral for the hilarity of drunk Hoshi, an argument could be made that Star Diary just isn't as popular as Not Much Prepared. That said though, I think what it lacks in popularity and virality it makes up for in sweetness and likability, which is why it's so highly praised under these Reddit posts. Unfortunately, I think it's finished airing since Eunchae's no longer an MC, so that's a bit of a shame, honestly. Next we have Going 17. Now, here's the real question. Which is more popular, Going 17 or Run BTS? And this is a bit of a hard question to answer. Looking at YouTube views, it seems like Going 17 has higher views than Run BTS. I saw videos with over 20 million views, while the highest I could see for BTS was 16 million. The lowest I saw for 17 was also around 400k, higher than BTS's 166k. However, views aren't everything, and like I said, Run BTS was initially hosted on VLive and would have lost views as it moved platforms. Run BTS was on TV, but so was Going 17, although as part of a larger block of content from HYBE artists in general. If we take the groups in general, I mean, they're probably around equal popularity in a good chunk of metrics. They have similar sales and have had similar impacts on the industry. BTS are clearly more popular, but a lot of this just comes down to how rigorous ARMYs are at streaming things, and their reputation as a fandom, which is just far more divisive than Carrots, especially internationally. Both groups are very influential, and both shows have influenced the industry a lot. Both have a large budget, are highly creative, and have brought a lot of fans into the industry, although BTS probably have brought in more fans. Both also seem to be popular enough that the staff for the variety shows are well known of, especially PD Hyunsuk from Going 17, who has made appearances in the show and has his own fan base. So BTS and 17 are at a standstill, right? BTS may be slightly edging out on top? Well, so it would seem, but I think Going 17 has one massive thing going for it. Going 17 has become so insanely successful and is so insanely liked that it has spawned an entire second fandom for 17. 17 have two fandoms. Most people know about Carrots, but they have a second, smaller fandom called Cubics. Cubics are fans of the group who aren't really fans of the music or anything else 17 do. They're just fans of Going 17. Cubics aren't just a fever dream that Carrots created. They're a real thing and have even been referenced by the group themselves. And I think the fact that Going 17 has been so successful, liked, and popular to have created a second fandom is a massive showing of its popularity. As an extension of this, I rarely see Run BTS discussed outside of ARMY spaces, but I very often see Going 17 brought up and discussed outside of Carrot spaces, showing the wide appeal the show has. The Wikipedia page even says that some people have called it, quote, the national web variety show, and, quote, K-pop's Infinite Challenge. Infinite Challenge being a massively liked and foundational Korean variety show. It's also praised for being a show pretty much anyone can like, and I think no evidence shows this better than the fact that my mum, of all people, has enjoyed Going 17 episodes. Honestly, I think this influence gives Going 17 the leg up and makes it the best K-pop variety show of all time. It is, in my very opinionated opinion, the best of the best, or at least I did think that, until a new contender arrived on the block at the end of last year, a new contender that blew my mind. I was convinced that no K-pop variety show would ever top Going 17, which managed to create an entirely new fandom of all things, until a certain new show came out and instantly took the top spot. I gave you a little hint at the start of the video. Do you remember? After I was initially lured into K-pop by TXT Subin, that's right, it all comes back to Subin, always. As much as I'm interested in them for their role in the parasocial relationships of K-pop, I actually don't watch a lot of variety shows. In the past, I've watched decent amounts of Run BTS and TXT's To Do, and I've occasionally tuned into shows by Kepler, Enhypen, and Zero Base One. Going 17 was a favourite of mine, and I watched it very often during my final high school exams, but after I graduated, I stopped watching it, although I did still believe it was the best. And then Subin walked in, as always. I first heard about Subin's new variety show My Fave's Fave when the first episode released on November 7th, 2024, and it went semi-viral. I watched it, I mean, of course I did. I'd found out that Subin, of all people, had his own variety show, and I fell in love. Again. The concept of the show, as it is brilliantly shown in the preview episode 0, is that, well, we all have things we're massive fans of, and when they get mentioned, as Subin demonstrated in episode 0, we can't shut up about them. Now, episode 0 was likely staged, at least to some extent, but the point still stands. Humans have obsessions. We, the fans, are often obsessed with our idols, at least to some extent, but our idols, well, they're also human. They have obsessions too, obsessions they can't contain their excitement for and can't stop talking about. Hence, the show follows Subin as he watches one guest per episode give an unhinged, ranting presentation about something they're insanely obsessed with. Season 1 starts with the iconic episode where Subin gives a presentation about his love for Kara and is surprised by Giri being on the show. The rest of Season 1 includes Mimiminu talking about G-Dragon, Wooyoung talking about Harry Potter, Heesung talking about Ramyeon, Woonhak talking about Lotte's baseball team, Yejin talking about dating shows and dragging Eunho along with him, and Yeonji talking about Gopchung. This season was absolutely pristine and was very well received, and thus it was no surprise that it was renewed for a second season, which aired its first episode with Beomgyu talking about K-dramas on April 10th, 2025. The rest of Season 2 included Junghao talking about durian fruits, Risabe talking about makeup, Youngtae talking about Overwatch, Leehan talking about fish, Kim Ji-hyun talking about K-pop, Chalzenta talking about romance, dating and being single, and Sungkwan talking about volleyball. Another pristine season indeed. At time of writing and recording, the second season has only just wrapped up, and of course a third season hasn't been confirmed yet, but, you know, I have hope. My favourite episode from Season 1 was Heesung's because, as some people pointed out in the comments, he looked and was styled super emo, but he was talking about the most wacky Ramyeon fanboy things possible. He was also goofy throughout the entire episode and seemed so focused on the Ramyeon that he just kind of blanked out at times. My favourite episode of Season 2 was Risabe's because it was absolutely unhinged, and I love how her passion for makeup and to a lesser extent Felix really shone through. It was brilliant to see her skills and experience, and it was also a great example of Subin's increased confidence and emceeing skills. Also, I thought Wolf Subin was hilarious. I'll give an honourable mention to Subin's Kara presentation and Junghao's Durian presentation, because both of these were also pretty unhinged and showed tons of passion. And I think this show is at its best when people are so passionate that they lose all sense of composure and start borderline frothing at the mouth. So, why is this show the best? Well, I think this clip of Woonhak freaking out when Subin showed an interest in his presentation says it all.
투자 던지기 전에 얼음? 그리고 이거 올리는 순간 땡.
그러면 올리고 있다가 출발하려 했을 때 딱 뒤도 갖고 이렇게 발견되면 어떡해?
그게 견제구. 그러니까 이게 그걸
I mean, how many of us have done this exact same sigh thing when we're so excited to talk about something, but we also know we need to rein ourselves in so we don't seem like total weirdos? Or have lit up or been satisfied when someone shows an interest in our interest, the way Subin does when Jihyun starts complimenting Kara. I know I certainly have. Some of mine have even been caught on tape. And that is the beauty of My Fave's Fave. It humanises our favourite idols and shows how, no, they are not in fact godlike and perfectly polished all the time. They have the same occasionally embarrassing obsessions that we do, and they want to talk about them just like we do. Episode 0 perfectly showcased the concept of the show, but I think it also showed this benefit well. Subin talks about how he admires how people can love things so passionately, hold things close to their hearts, and about the journey of being a fan. Not necessarily of K-pop, but just in general. And as staged as it might be, he showcases the insane rant concept of the show when he starts maniacally ranting about Kara after the staff members show even the slightest interest in his interest. You can see how his face lights up, and you can see this with all of the episodes on the show, and this passion is what I and many other fans like to see. I mean, to be fair, it's no secret that my biases are usually the ones who I think are the most passionate about performing and about life in general. Speaking of my biases, another reason I really like this show is, well, Subin, of course. Of course, Subin will bring a lot of his fans to the show, but he also brings his own unique chemistry. Subin's style as an MC relies on the fact that he is an awkward and shy introvert who often gets stage fright but isn't afraid to express that he's nervous. This means that his MCing is obviously awkward, but his charisma and connection with his guests makes up for this in a very charming way. In fact, hilariously enough, Subin has become so experienced as an MC that he seems far less nervous, and the nervousness may even be partially or even fully feigned at this point, and yet it still works, possibly even better with the confidence underneath. It's part of his character and his MC charm, and this show uses a one-on-one situation to showcase it wonderfully. I think this show is a great one to show his growth in skills and confidence, and it's been really nice to see his journey from introverted trainee to voted as the leader of TXT to nervously MCing on Music Bank to hosting his own show. I mean, just look at the difference between him at TXT's debut showcase, or him meeting Aaron for the first time, to now hosting this show. It shows that time and time again, despite any mistakes being potentially massive in fallout in an industry like this, Subin has gone out of his comfort zone, presumably with the goal of growing as a person and an artist. And if that isn't the definition of passion for his career, I don't know what is. I would cry with joy, except I think I've distanced myself from K-pop too much mentally for that, at least over the course of this video. I can still appreciate his hard work and self-development though. Anyway, stan Subin, people. Another thing I really like about the show is the staff. The staff have no issues reacting to things, and you can often hear their reactions to what the guest is saying. For instance, them laughing at Heesung or cringing at Junghao talking about durians. It's really fun to have a live and relatively unfiltered audience. In my opinion, it's a billion times better and more engaging than both no reactions or a laugh track. I also like that it isn't just idols on the show. The show also brings in idol-adjacent people like Risabe, so it's nice to be introduced to new figures. It even performs well in terms of solid numbers, something we've been using to measure other reality shows. Every episode of this show reaches 1 million views within a few days easily, and typically reach far higher view numbers within weeks or months. It gets similar views to Going 17 and Run BTS of all shows, which is insane for a single host talk show like this. It frequently outperforms Star Diary, but is, like I mentioned earlier, far outperformed by Not Much Prepared, which is an outlier. But either way, my fave's fave is getting significant views and attention. You know what? This show is so good. Can we get 1 billion seasons of this? I want 80-year-old Subin talking to freshly debuted idols born in the year 2060 about things they're super passionate about. In fact, if Subin left TXT to run this show full-time, honestly, I don't even think I'd be that upset about it, because I genuinely think this show will be one of, if not his greatest career legacy. The only problem I have with this show is that I wish it had more female artists and guests on it. We've only had 3 women on the show across 2 seasons, and none of them were actually from idol groups. Risabe and Chalzenta aren't even music artists. I know most of the idols who are showcased are Subin's friends, and it makes sense that he would bring in more of his male friends than female ones, but I'd still like to see, I don't know, like that girl from Islet ranting about League of Legends, Sakura talking about crochet or something, Lily talking about the books she's read. Surely so many of these female idols have weird obsessions that would make great content. Now, on a more serious note, this show humanizes idols and makes them possibly more relatable than any other variety show, which is all well and good, but why? Well, parasociality, of course. And this show is not only the best at showcasing idols as human beings, in my opinion, it's also the best for creating parasocial relationships. Once you see someone's insane personal passion to this degree, especially if you are already predisposed to think of them positively, it's natural to feel more fond of them and to feel closer to them. My Fave's Fave helps people feel closer with their idols, and this is exactly how many industries, but especially the K-pop one, create the mega intense parasocial relationships that define its success and also its dark underbelly. It can be very easy to convince yourself that your idol is your friend after you see them do an unhinged presentation about something wacko. Hence why variety shows exist, and probably one of the reasons this show was greenlit. They knew it would be successful since it would create exactly the kinds of cute and funny, insane moments which draw in fans' views and comments. The downside of this is how idols are treated when these parasocial relationships go bad. Uncomfortable fan calls, sexual harassment, and sussings are just some of these consequences. However, if we watch these shows with some degree of distance and critical viewing, like just a little bit so you don't think it's completely weird, we're not as likely to fall into these awkward parasocial holes, and pretty much the singular disadvantage of these shows is mitigated. It becomes a win-win-win situation. The fans get fun content, the artists get to seemingly have fun telling people about their passions, and the companies get more money. You may remember I talked about a win-win-lose situation at the start of this video. This is the solution. Yeah, so moral of the story is that My Fave's Fave is the best variety show of all time. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Korean variety shows originated in the country in the 50s and 60s with the introduction of commercial television, and have of course become part of the idol industry, with the first idol variety shows originating at the start of the 2000s. These shows have become far more popular in recent years, with this popularity boom roughly starting with the end of 2nd gen and the start of 3rd gen, and various kinds of shows have been created. These shows aren't just here for fun, they have very obvious purposes. They make idols feel more human and relatable, and thus make fans feel more fond for them and strengthen the parasocial relationship between fans and idols. By also having the goal of being funny, aka entertaining, they also keep fans engaged in a show and in a group. Hence, they bring in and keep hold of more fans, and thus more money. There have been probably hundreds or even thousands of different variety shows in the history of K-pop, and today I've only been able to mention a handful of them. I also wanted to take a dive into the question of which show was or is the best. As I said earlier, I think Going 17 has a pretty good claim to being the best, but the real reason I wanted to make this video was because, although I had thought that Going 17 was the best for a long time and would retain that crown forever, it was suddenly and unexpectedly dethroned. Unsurprisingly, by the man who got me into K-pop himself. Subin's My Fave's Fave was first released in November 2024 and has the concept of, well, your fave's fave. The show is a great representation of the power of variety shows. It humanizes idols by showing that, yes, they may be idols, but they have the same niche obsessions that all of us do. It's the exemplar for completing the goals of a variety show. The show is also a great mark of how Subin himself has grown as a person and an MC, which is always nice to see as a fan. And although Subin is, in my biased opinion, the best MC for this show, I honestly do think that I would love it regardless of whether he was the host or not. Just the concept itself is brilliant. Mind you, supposedly he came up with the concept anyway, so I don't know, maybe it's inseparable from him. So I guess this is what I would present on My Fave's Fave, since ironically enough, the show about obsessions has become an obsession of mine. Just don't forget, a critical thought a day keeps the parasocial away. Anyway, we've come to the end of another over-length minisode. Thanks for watching, I hope you've learned something, and I'll see you in the next minisode.